Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. So this is my 4th time filming this wrap up, and quite frankly I'm just not having the best day. So we're just gonna talk about all the books that I haven't talked about in other videos. If you are interested in my thoughts on any of these books, make sure you check out the vlogs. But other than that, I'm going through it, and I just want to talk about the things that I haven't talked about. The first thing that I read in the month that I haven't talked about yet is Angel's Blood by Nalini Singh. This is an urban fantasy series, and it's the first book in the... So this one is about the heroine who is a guild hunter, and they, I think, are half human, half angel. Regardless, they're superhuman, and they are tasked by angels to bring in rogue vampires. So vampires that have broken their servitude and are just like going off, basically. So vampires are created by angels, and they have I think it's like a couple decades or a century or something of servitude to the angel that created them, and guild hunters bring those vampires back. And the heroine in this one is tasked by an archangel in her city to bring back a rogue, what she thinks is a vampire. And when she meets the hero, who's the archangel, he's like the big bad. He's part of like this council of a bunch of different archangels, and it seems like they live for a really long time. And he's lived for a long time, but not like the longest. And this council is full of secrets and corruption and like a bunch of different things going on. And he is a very like cold, stoic hero, and the heroine is like your stereotypical like baddie. She is, you know, take no shit and all that, but it felt just very like one-dimensional. I did end up giving this 3 stars. I think the world and all of that is interesting, and I would continue, but I don't really remember anything from it like 3 weeks later. So it was all right. I read Control Freak. I read this for the Brianna Hale backlist read along live this month, and this is about the heroine who is in recovery for an eating disorder, and there is a relapse in this. Heavy trigger warnings for discussion of an eating disorder. And she becomes the assistant to the hero, who is supposed to be like this absolute asshole. He's a super control freak, and he requires his employees to be like very perfect. And so she becomes his assistant, and they enter into a DDLG relationship. And I really liked this. I ended up giving it 4 stars just because I think that there was more emphasis on the heroine and what she's going through than the hero. And the delivery, like, we were set up to get this really controlling, really domineering hero, and I didn't really feel like he was that way. He was definitely very strict in their sexual relationship, but he was also very caring. So I just feel like the aspect of his aspect of the story just wasn't really delivered in the most satisfying way, but I think their relationship is beautiful. He is just like this stable person in her life that helps give her tools to handle her recovery and, you know, those intrusive thoughts. So I think the relationship is beautiful. I just wanted a little bit more from the hero side of it. So then I finished the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy by reading As Good as Dead. Like I said, this is the 3rd book in the trilogy, so I can't really get into plots, but I did end up giving this 4 stars. I think I gave the first and second one 5 stars. I've listened to the whole trilogy as an audiobook, which I personally believe is the best way to go. The main character, Pippa, has her own true crime podcast, and in the audiobook it's a full cast with sound effects, and so it has like the podcast sound effects, and like the interviews and all that have their own castings. So they're very, very good podcasts. But the first book centers around Pippa, who is doing her senior project on this crime that happened in her town that is a closed case, but she doesn't really believe the story that the cops gave. So the crime was that this young girl was killed, and her boyfriend confessed to killing her and then committed suicide. And so she works with his brother to figure out like the truth, and then it kind of goes from there and into 3 books, so it's obviously different stories. I think it's probably my favorite mystery series, definitely my favorite YA mystery series. It's very, very well done. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, the last one, because it wasn't quite as satisfactory as I would have liked, but I still think it was very strong, a very strong ending. And then I wrapped up another trilogy, the Daevabad trilogy, by reading Empire of Gold, and unfortunately I gave this one 4 stars as well. First and second I gave 5 stars, but overall I think this trilogy is really stunning. It's probably my favorite fantasy series that I've ever read. It is a Middle Eastern inspired fantasy following a woman named Nahiri, who in the beginning of the first one accidentally summons a jinn. And this jinn, Dara, tells her that she is the last descendant of this like rightful ruler of this hidden city called Daevabad. And Daevabad is this city where jinn and like magical creatures are. And half of it is her traveling to Daevabad, and then you're also getting the perspective of the crown prince of the family that's currently ruling Daevabad, and it's just so beautiful. S.A. Chakraborty is like galaxy brained. Her writing is absolutely gorgeous, but her ability to plot and weave interpersonal relationships together is fantastic. Character motivations are so clear and understandable, and just like fantastic series overall. I just found this ending, again, to be a little bit unsatisfactory. I think some of the plot points and how they wrapped up were a little not great. I didn't like how it went, but overall I'm very happy with the series. I would highly recommend to anybody that likes adult fantasy, or if you're trying to get into adult fantasy. I think it's very understandable, it's accessible, it's beautiful, just fantastic overall. So then, if you did not know, I shared it on Instagram, but I haven't posted a video since then, like not a pre-recorded video, but I lost my grandfather 2 weeks ago, and I didn't read after that, but on the way to the funeral, like on the way to where the funeral is going to be, my mother and I decided to listen to the audiobook of Finley, Donovan is Killing It. The first time I read this, I gave it 4 stars. Again, I gave it 4 stars this go round, but it almost got 5. But I think because I needed like that distraction, that's why I was considering giving it 5. I don't really think it's a 5-star book. It's fantastic. It's a absurdist comedic mystery, if you will, and it's about Finley Donovan, who is a single mother. Her ex-husband is kind of a douchebag, and she is an author, and so her publicist is like demanding a second book from her. So she meets with her publicist in a Panera Bread one day, and they're talking about it. It's like a murder, it's like a romantic suspense book, and they're talking about, you know, using all of that like murder lingo. And the woman next to them at the table at Panera thinks that she's a hit woman for hire, so she slips a piece of paper into Finley's bag that says like her husband's name, their address, and how much she's willing to pay her. And it just goes bonkers the entire time. You're like, Finley, you're such an idiot. She's making all of these stupid mistakes, and it just becomes completely unhinged in the best possible way. I absolutely love this. I'm very excited to continue with the second one. It's just so funny and very like lighthearted. There is like gore and stuff like that, and so there are some dark elements to it. So it's not quite cozy, but it is super, super fun and exactly what I needed. So then when I got back home, I was struggling to pick some things up, and I knew that I had some Audible originals on my Audible library that I wanted to get to. So I ended up picking up Call Me Maybe, which I gave 4 stars. This is a super cute romance that ends in a happy for now, and it is about 2 people who meet on a customer service line. The heroine needs help with her website. She calls the website's customer service. She gets the hero, and they have like this delightful like 12-hour long conversation, and they end up meeting, and it's very cute. It's like very, very well done. You can kind of tell the story was built to be an Audible original, and there's like dual perspective, and there's sounds, and it's just very, very good. I really liked it. It was really cute. And then I ended up listening to The Setup, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I hated the beginning of this book and loved the end of this book, so I kind of landed at a 3-star. But this is basically about a woman who gets set up on a couple of blind dates by her grandfather, and the hero is one of those blind dates. And in the beginning of the book, the comments that he makes about her are very disgusting. Like, the first thing he says is like, the first thing he thinks about her is like her boobs are small, and he's just a complete dick. And it's not, and we get his perspective, and he's being an asshole for no reason. And then something very traumatic happens. She's a doctor. Someone has a heart attack in the restaurant that they're at, and she like basically saves his life. And then the hero is suddenly like, well, she's someone of worth. Let me pay some attention to her. And like suddenly he's like stalking her social media, and he's like really into her. And then they end up getting set up on a second date by their grandparents again, and they hit it off that go round. And I liked the second half. It was cute, but I had a lot of issues with the hero in the beginning. And also, I think that their happy for now was just that. Like, I really couldn't see a happily ever after for this couple. They're fundamentally two very different people. They want separate things out of life, so I just can't see them working, but it was like an okay listen. And then I listened to A Walk in the Park. This is an Audible original from Rebekah Weatherspoon. I love Rebekah Weatherspoon, and so when I saw this was available, I wanted it. And this is about the hero and the heroine who both adopt the same dog. So there's like a mix-up when they go to the rescue, and they both decide that they're gonna co-parent this dog. And they have this instant attraction to each other, but they don't want to tell each other because they don't want to make it weird. They start flirting, and it's just delightful. It does end in an HFN, I think, and it's just super cute. And then the last thing that I read was The Wicked and the Wallflower, which I ended up giving 4 out of 5 stars. I read this because I had heard that it had like Peaky Blinders vibes, which I love Peaky Blinders, so I picked it up. And this is about the heroine who, in a fit of rage against a group of people who had been bullying her, she said that she was engaged to a duke. So she was diamond of the season, and then she ended up getting compromised and in this like really bad situation. So she kind of becomes ostracized. She becomes this wallflower, and then at this dance or at this ball, she is being nitpicked and bullied by this group of people that she thought were her friends. And so she basically, in revenge, is like, I'm better than you. I'm engaged to the duke, who is like this reclusive duke who everybody thinks is like mad, but she just says it in a fit of rage. And the hero is actually on the balcony when it happens, and he is a brother to the duke, and he is there to threaten the duke because when they were children, they were orphans. They found out that they were bastards to the duke, and when the duke found out that he had children, he decided to pit them against each other to figure out who was going to be the heir. And in retaliation, they decide that none of them are going to have heirs because they want to make sure that their father doesn't get what he wants. And so he is at that ball that night to remind the duke, like, to threaten him basically. And he overhears the conversation, and he decides to proposition the heroine to make the duke fall in love with her, all the while knowing that he's going to ruin her to ruin the duke, if that makes sense. So this starts their like proposition. It's sort of like a lessons in seduction, but not really. It's more like they just have like some chance encounters, and it involves her going to his place of business, which is in like a poor area, and it is this area that him and his brother and his sister run. They're like a gang that they started when they were kids, and they've taken over this area. They protect everybody, they have jobs for everybody, and they like ensure that this area flourishes. And she breaks into his warehouse where he is running, I think it's drugs and people, no, it's alcohol. He's running alcohol. And so she is very clever, and they just work super well together. She discovers that this like seedy underbelly is something that she wants to participate in, and like their relationship is just perfection. The things that Devil, the hero, says to her are just fantastic. I loved it a whole lot. It definitely has Peaky Blinders vibes, and I'm very excited to continue on in the series. I think the next book is Wit, which I'm pumped for. I'm super excited. That's his brother. I'm super excited to get him because he's like this stoic guy that like never talks. So I'm very excited, but he's like a prize fighter, and I'm very excited to see his story. But those are all of the books that I read in April. Let me know down in the comments your favorite read from the month. I would love to know. Anything that I should add to my TBR, please let me know. Other than that, if you don't have anything to say, leave a cup emoji down in the comments. Any cup will do. Other than that, thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next one.